Hi folks, and welcome to the video. You may wonder why I have images of flight simulators in the background, but all will be revealed in due course. My hope here is to give some insight into what it's like to go through the experience of being diagnosed with a brain tumour, living with it as a low-grade tumour, progression to a high-grade tumour, and then surgery, radiotherapy, chemotherapy, and finally life after treatment. Please do not take this to be everybody's experience, prediction, treatment plan or outcome. Every brain tumour is an individual journey with different impacts and hurdles to face. Tumours differ and some are curable while others are not. Likewise, treatments and medical advice differ on a person-by-person basis. There are too many variables to draw a conclusive prediction, although there can be strong indicators for potential outcomes. Furthermore, the decisions each person makes will differ widely, such is human nature. Consequently, please don't consider this to be a guide on making those tough decisions, rather my experience of making them and life afterwards. Consider it a glimpse through the looking glass at one particular case for one particular person. So why am I recording this? I guess in part to pass on my experiences, but also for me to review myself what's happened over the last 10 years. I've scripted this video and the reason why will become clearly obvious later on. So first I'll set the scene before discussing the impact. So in the 2000s I was living a happy life as a family man with my wife, kids and all the normal lifestyle elements one would expect. Spoiler alert, my wife is an amazing woman with whom I celebrated 21 years of marriage this year. We lived in a semi-detached house, dogs, solid income and so on. I was a serving police officer and enjoyed riding motorbikes, adventure sports, was a qualified pilot and generally enjoyed the outdoor life. And then bang! November 2010 I was on a night shift, driving a police car when I had a seizure. Now it wasn't like what we think of a stereotypical seizure with an absence or having a fit on the ground. It was amnesia and flashing lights in my vision, almost like a strobe light. I had no idea where I was, even though I'd driven that particular road hundreds if not thousands of times. It was a good 10 minutes or so before it passed and I was eventually able to call colleagues for help. I then spent the next 2 days in bed feeling very unwell before returning to work. My line manager insisted I see my GP, who referred me for an MRI scan. Now at the time I didn't really attach a great deal of significance to that because there had been no recurring episodes. In the meantime I referred to Dr. Google, which told me it could be anything from mild memory loss episode all the way through to you have weeks to live. It was the worst thing I could have done, and whilst I would strongly recommend against it, it's an almost unsuppressible urge which leads to no answers really. After the scan I was referred to a neurosurgeon, and at that point I knew something was wrong. The diagnosis was brain tumour, most likely a glioma, and with my wife sat by my side we were told it was incurable. I remember everything clearly. I processed it as I had done with any trauma whilst I'd been serving in the police. As such I recognised it, but the significance was slightly distanced. A protective measure, if you like. I knew exactly what was being said and the potential ramifications for me, my wife and our young children. The prognosis was unclear, so Prof, the neurosurgeon, explained that the best thing at that point was to do a biopsy, and was I free next Monday, which was a bit of a shock to the system given the speed that things were now travelling at. My wife was crying, and after the talk with Prof we moved to a different room with a specialist cancer nurse. During that we were handed a bunch of leaflets and support material about brain tumours, and it's at that point I broke down. Tumour type unknown, but most likely incurable, prognosis unknown. The subsequent biopsy revealed it was a low grade, grade 2 glioma in the part of the brain responsible for vision. The decision was made that the impact on quality of life would be significant, and so we would watch and wait. And we did. I lost my driving licence, and between that and the tumour everything that was part of my life except my family disappeared in an instant. I had to leave a job I loved, my passion for anything with a petrol engine, flying and all of my adventure sports due to my now recurrent seizures. Life as I knew it had changed irreversibly, and honestly depressingly so. Between us we made the decision not to tell our children as they were only young. Then followed 6 years of otherwise normal life in all bar 6 monthly scans. I got my driving licence back, was able to ride motorbikes, drive cars, do some sports, and I went to university for a few years and then got alternative work. And then came the second bang. In June 2017 the scan returned a very faint change only spotted by my neurosurgeon. During that consultation I made the decision that we needed to operate, and lo and behold it had changed to a malignant grade 3 high-grade tumour. And then things moved very rapidly towards surgery, and the surgery was an experience that I would never ever forget. I remember going into a waiting area with my wife prior to surgery before saying goodbye and walking through the doors to another waiting area where patients were being prepped for surgery. It was heartbreaking, and I was truly terrified at the thought of brain surgery and possibly not seeing loved ones again. Moreover, the prospect of them losing me weighed heavily on my mind, if you'll excuse the pun. So here's the thing, the human brain is the soul. It's who you are and it's what you can do. For me, it's your personality, it's your memories, it's emotions, it's the very being of who you are. And here you are waiting for surgery, waiting for somebody who you have to put your trust in to try and keep as much of that intact as possible. It crosses your mind that the thought of both death and personality change are possible, and the possible outcomes are really sobering at that point. Medics can reassure, but not guarantee. It is a truly life-changing experience, and one which leaves an indelible mark, likewise one I wouldn't want to go through again, but which may very well be the case. I had never felt such fear before, nor since, but I know it's going to come again at some point. I have two clear memories of waking up after the surgery, for two reasons. The first was I was alive, and it's easy to say that, but it's difficult to comprehend just how strong that emotion is. The second one was that although it had taken a serious hit, I could at very least see, albeit with significant impairment. You see, the tumour was in the visual part of the brain, and when I asked the surgeon if they'd managed to remove all of it, the response I get was that the surgery went well. So that was an unexpected but entirely reasonable answer. The problem is that there are many sorts of brain tumours. Some are diffuse with no clear edges, some are spread into neighbouring tissues, there are malignant tumours that may have seeded undetectable cancerous cells elsewhere in the brain or central nervous system, whilst others have clearly defined margins and can be totally removed. Examination of the tumour through the labs showed it had changed to a grade 3, in my case an anaplastic oligodendroglioma. For me, recovery from surgery took about 2 weeks, during which I could see, pun intended, the true impact. I was back to step 1 with the seizures, but now was visually impaired and have significant problems with fatigue. Then followed 37 sessions of radiotherapy and 9 months of chemotherapy. The radiotherapy was unpleasant and unremarkable, other than the extreme tiredness and losing large patches of hair. Chemotherapy was different. I had a chemotherapy called PCV, which is a combination of 3 drugs given either through a drip or tablets. The drip was okay, but I had the weirdest sensation with the first set of tablets. With the very first capsule, I remember standing alone in the kitchen staring at the capsule. This was a tablet that could save my life, but it was likely to make me very ill, and it took a while to compose my thoughts to commit to taking it. And the memory of that is vivid. And that was the start of the next 9 months. Extreme fatigue, nausea, lack of appetite, difficulty sleeping, change of taste, loss of interest in foods I previously loved, low mood, and a few other bits. The impact on my vision was severe enough that I had to relearn how to read, write, and also the comprehension of these sorts of things became much slower. The impact was severe enough that I had to leave the job I was doing at the time. The biggest impact was the loss of my driving licence again, and it's difficult to comprehend how much the world is focused on cars until you lose the ability to drive. Shopping is now out of town in various retail parks, doctor's appointments, hospital visits, and obviously the other thing is work is much harder to find. I have had a couple of jobs since finishing treatment, but for one reason or another, elements of the impact of the treatment have caused problems which have resulted me in losing them again. And here comes the significance of YouTube. I now create YouTube videos about aviation in the virtual world of flight simulation. It is challenging, but it's something I can do given there's so much I can no longer do. Whilst I may need to record a section 20 or 30 times to get it right, it's positive and engaging, particularly if people enjoy the content. It's become more challenging over the last 8 to 9 months, as in addition to my sight loss, I've noticed a change in my cognitive processing and short-term memory. My speech is worse and I lose track of sentences, what I was talking about, and stumble upon other words. I routinely forget the names of simple things or end up scanning in the kitchen trying to recall where the spoons are. I've lived in our current house for 10 years. We've all had that experience of walking into the room and forgetting what we went in for. but I did the cooking for the family, and it's not usual 10 years on to forget where the cutlery drawer is in your own house. Actually, my short-term memory is diabolical, and 30 seconds after being told something, it can be gone completely as if it was never there. I also forget words temporarily, and they can be common words. I might be talking about a car, but forget the actual word car. It's as if it's not there. We all experience the sense of a word being on the tip of our tongue, but it's very different when the word for a common everyday object just isn't in your memory at all. It's as if it never existed. Fortunately, these things are intermittent, and language returns, which for me feels like a temporary inability, much like searching through a book you've never read before without an index. It's still there, it's just that at that time the memory can't find it. Numbers, places, names, and even familiar words are frequently a challenge. I start sentences but can't remember the subject partway through, or have to substitute words. And beyond that, I take tablets twice a day, which reminds me incessantly of the tumour, or at least elements are still there, which ensure its growth again at some point. I know that my treatment and the impact can't be seen, but finding ways around the new wiring in the brain is tiring. I'm adept at hiding it now from strangers, but it's sometimes still evident to those close to me. God forbid someone interrupts me mid-sentence, else it will disappear from my mind completely, as will the subject matter in many cases if it's not obvious. But on the more positive side, life is good. I'm alive and well, and as my wife says, the challenges I face are the price to pay for being alive. Unlike many, I can walk, talk, read, write, and I still have my wit and a fantastic family. I have a YouTube channel to focus on, and whilst it takes a couple of weeks to create a video, far longer than it used to be, it keeps me mentally active. Challenges have been faced and either overcome or managed. The focus now is on finding a job I can do and to keep going with trying to grow my YouTube channel. What the future holds, nobody knows, but the ever-present reminder of the fragility of life encourages me to enjoy it. It's too valuable to waste on useless things and needs to be celebrated and cherished. Finally, the video isn't monetized, but if you do find it useful, please consider liking or sharing it, or even subscribing to my channel, because somebody else might find the video beneficial. And my final parting thoughts are, cancer is awful. Brain tumours are one of the worst sorts of cancer. They're a very personal thing. They eat deep into your soul, and the challenges, whilst not insurmountable, are very, very great indeed. So for those who have a brain tumour, good luck and keep fighting. And for those who support others with brain tumours, hopefully this video has given a little bit of an insight into what life's like from the person's perspective. And it's worth remembering there are many different ways that people will react to the diagnosis of a brain tumour or the possible prognosis of it. And as a final parting thought for the video, I'd just like to kind of sum it up. Every individual is exactly that, and every tumour is individual to that person. They can behave differently, be in different places, need different treatment, and have different responses and reactions. So there's no one size fits all with the brain tumour. So with that in mind, the final thing I want to say is take care of everybody, particularly those who either have a brain tumour or are supporting those with a brain tumour, and my best wishes to all. Take care.